My name is Kristy Seymour and I am a circus artist. And today I'd like to share with you how I use my art form of circus to help children with autism to reach their true potential. I was first drawn to circus at the age of 19 while studying theatre at university, after seeing an incredible performance of acrobats in harnesses flying off the top of a tall building. Now, while my peers were probably watching this performance in discomfort and possibly fear, I was watching in awe, thinking, that's it. That is exactly what I want to do. And it wasn't just the spectacle and high flying. It was the essence of circus as an art form. The misfits, the fringe dwellers, the nomadic energy. Everything about circus that it embodied spoke to me as an individual. Through circus, a person's body is changed, and so is his or her perception of what a body can do. Now, as a circus performer, I come from a world where the starting point for everything is that anything is possible, given the right amount of tenacity and dedication. However, throughout my career, and particularly since working in the field of autism, I've begun to realise that not everyone shares this open-minded perspective of the world. See, the circus is a place where you can reach for the unattainable, to climb to the top of a 14-metre flying trapeze rig and launch your body into flight. Circus is a place where we stretch ourselves, literally and figuratively, where we push boundaries, where we balance between danger and enchantment. For children with autism, the practice of circus values their eccentricities, their individual preferences and talents, while at the same time it encourages them to interact with and rely on other children and their circus trainers. One of my heroes, circus legend Dr. Reg Bolton, once said, "What do we do in the circus? We give them risk. We swing them upside down, we chuck them around, or they chuck themselves around. We give them risk." I first started teaching circus to children with autism in 2010 during my time as head trainer at Flipside Circus in Brisbane. At the time, I was working with an occupational therapist to deliver an All Abilities workshop program for differently abled children. Some of the kids had Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, hemiplegia, and a great majority of them had a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. After several weeks of working with the children as their circus trainer, I was beginning to see huge developmental leaps, both emotional and physical. They were more confident, they were connecting socially, they were developing in their gross and fine motor skills. Parents were telling me that their children were developing more in the circus program than they had in years of traditional therapy, such as physio. And they'd often tell me things like, "Kristy, my son is now able to tie his own shoelaces and do up zippers and buttons completely on his own, and he has never been able to do that before. Why? Why does circus work so well?" Now, at the time, I couldn't pinpoint the answer. I wasn't quite sure yet. I knew circus was a great developmental practice for all kinds of children, but I didn't know what it was that clicked autism together with it. But I was just as excited as they were. So I started making phone calls and sending emails to physiotherapy centres, autism therapy providers, to let them know that we had this amazing program running and it was going really well and the results were outstanding. But they weren't as excited as I was. In fact, they were completely opposed to it. Every single place I called gave me a very similar response. "There's no proof to that. We're not interested. No one's ever written research on that, so we won't consider it or endorse it in any way." And probably the one that kicked me into action the most, "Circus isn't a thing, it doesn't count." Now, having been a circus artist for almost 18 years, I can tell you circus is very much a thing. The art form has been around for hundreds of years. And one of the key things about circus is that it teaches you that you can make the impossible possible. I was so used to being around other circus artists that saw impossible as a challenge rather than a stopping point, that it was a bit of a shock for me to hear these negative reactions. However, it was what I needed to fuel the fire in me to prove them wrong. Circus people dream big. We see potential in places where most people wouldn't even dare to go. To climb to the top of the roof and dive through the air. The culture of circus has taught me to go beyond myself, not just physically as an acrobat, but also in my ideology of the world. I decided that I wanted to get this idea of circus and autism out there to try to help as many children as I possibly could. I thought, if no one else has written research about this, I will. So I quit my excellent, reliable job and went back to university to be a struggling student again, to undertake my master's with honours degree. And in 2012, I wrote a thesis called How Circus Training Can Enhance the Wellbeing of Children with Autism and Their Families, to explore and explain how circus works for autism. I received first-class honours for my thesis and decided to run some workshops on the Gold Coast to try out the new philosophy I had developed. Armed with my new expertise, I started making phone calls and sending emails again, in the hope of accessing the autism community in order to reach the children who needed the circus training the most. However, once again, I was met with the same negative reactions and roadblock responses I had previously encountered, including, "There isn't enough research written about this. When someone else writes about it, then it will be reputable." Now, as I mentioned before, I see challenges as something to run at, not run from. I figured I just had to find a way to climb over this challenging perception that circus still wasn't a thing, to try to make circus training for autistic children accessible. I knew there had to be a way to make it possible. So I wrote a grant. I applied for funding through the City of Gold Coast to run a 10-week program for autistic children and their siblings to come together once a week in a shared experience of the circus to try to bridge the gap that often occurs in ASD families. My funding application was successful. I sent out emails advertising the free program. I had 16 spaces available. In 12 hours, the program completely booked out and I had a waiting list with another 16 participants on it. People on the waiting list expressed that they were more than willing to pay for their children to attend a workshop of circus. They were so excited about the idea. So I just had to get over that clinical barrier and perception of autism to get to the people who really got it. So I did. I put extra workshops on, and that's how my circus school was born, Circus Stars. A circus school solely dedicated to children with autism, the first of its kind in the world. So, why does circus work so well? I'm sure there's many of you sitting here tonight thinking that the spectacle and frenetic physicality and chaos of the circus would be a complete sensory overload and be in fact the total opposite of what a child with autism might need. However, circus, like autism, is somewhat of a spectrum of creative chaos, risk, trust, and belonging. My experience suggests that when children with autism are immersed as participants in this state of creative chaos, in fact, they begin to draw on the senses that they usually repress in order to shield themselves from the world. You see, circus is a place where you can fit in without having to blend in, where chaos is embraced and risk is encouraged. Now, beyond safety parameters, I have very few rules in my class. I try to create the most flexible learning environment that I can. One that allows the hyperactive child to race around and bound off energy, because that's what they need to do. But a teaching environment that also allows the introverted, quiet child a safe, quiet space to focus on some juggling on their own, because that's what they might need to do. I find that drawing lines and parameters around children with autism only aggravates their personal challenges. For in most aspects of their lives, they're already being told, sit still, don't make that noise, don't act in this way, focus, in order to blend in. In my class, they don't need to blend in. They are encouraged to stand out. They are encouraged to take risks, physical, emotional, and social risks. Learning how to take healthy and calculated risks in a safe environment builds physical and emotional resilience. It develops pride and self-confidence. When a new student finally feels ready to let go of their hands on a trapeze and hang upside down by their legs completely by themselves, the joy they exude is incredibly contagious. I stay close by so they know that I'm there. So with the risk they take, they learn not only to trust me, that I will be there and I won't let them fall, but they also learn to trust themselves and to see themselves differently. They begin to realise, I can do this. Maybe I can do anything. And beyond that is the confidence that they exude as a group. So for example, when we come together and put a human pyramid together, we are physically relying on each other to hold each other up. There is no room for mistrust here. Circus brings people together. It changes how we see ourselves and each other. I once had a student tell me he was allergic to purple that day, on Wednesdays, only on Wednesdays when we had circus. And that meant that he couldn't touch the purple carpet that covered the entire floor of the circus space. Okay, no problem. I put the tight wire over the carpet so he could focus on balancing on the tight wire and not touching the purple carpet. He could walk back and forth. If a child has a preferred way of being in the world, that can often be incorporated into their training. But the more exciting element to this is that while we're allowing this child to be just as they are, to be indulging in a repetitive movement, repetitively balancing on a tight wire, walking back and forth, and repetitively throwing and catching a ball is also targeting their physical therapy. It is possible to use circus training to target the same motor skills and muscle memory outcomes that are often used in occupational therapy and physiotherapy. Circus skills such as tight wire, trapeze, and acrobatics all target both the gross and fine motor skills, as well as developing balance, core stability, agility, and flexibility. Trapeze and juggling in particular can be used to cross the midline of the brain, so getting the left and right brain firing together. Proprioception is developed when you are flipping and tumbling, when you are juggling, when you are swinging upside down on a trapeze, trying to figure out which one's your left and which one is your right, locating your body in the space. Circus provides the sensory embodiment that children on the autism spectrum so often seek. Circus is tactile. Since I've been using circus and autism together, I have seen children go into amazing transformations. I have seen kids who have been highly agitated, anxious, and refusing to participate in class at all go to calm, focused, and adventurous by the end of the hour. One of my longest running students has gone from being a child with incredibly low muscle tone, who was highly anxious, a little bit antisocial, to a strong, confident, resilient mentor and leader within the class. His core stability and balance has developed so much now that he recently mastered the unicycle. And the level of skills he is achieving on the aerial equipment is outstanding. And this from a child who used to hide under the tables and chairs in the circus space. Since Circus Stars opened in 2013, I have seen children who could not do one single jump in a skipping rope achieve goals of 100 jumps with their eyes closed in a matter of months. Now, beyond these amazing physical leaps that are possible through the use of circus are also the emotional ones. The confidence they exude, the friendships that they make, the bear hugs they give me at the end of each class. Because they're invited to be just as they are, they become the very best versions of themselves. I'm proud to tell you that I now get recommendations rather than roadblocks from paediatricians, physiotherapists, speech pathologists. My research has been added to Cirque du Soleil's social development department, Cirque du Monde. It has been used in Europe at an autism special school to include circus as a key therapeutic practice. This is all beyond what I set out to achieve at the start. I've learned a lot through working with these children. My students continue to teach me every single week. Kids on the spectrum are more often than not brilliant, bright sparks that have a lot to teach us about different ways of seeing the world. Their ability to order meticulously or be fabulously chaotic and freeing of boundaries. My journey with circus and autism has taught me that autism is a superpower, not a deficiency. That circus can make the world a better place, and to say yes to the impossible. Make it possible. Thank you.